SQL once provided a powerful programming tool that could match the performance and functionality of ETL tools available on the market. However, as the complexity of ETL requirements increases with growing data, sources, and reporting needs, hand coding becomes a liability to businesses looking to speed up time to market and minimize costs. Hello, and welcome to this Bitwise webinar, an automated approach to migrating PL SQL to Informatica. My name is Nathan Nichols, and joining me today is Shahab Kamal, our EVP of Client Management here at Bitwise. Before I pass things over to Shahab, who will be talking about an ETL conversion automation tool that can reduce manual effort by up to 70% and greatly improve accuracy in the new system, let me first provide a quick introduction to our organization. Bitwise is a data management consulting and services company. We help organizations meet their enterprise reporting, analytics, and visualization requirements by providing complete end-to-end services for business intelligence, data warehousing, big data, digital, and enterprise applications. What truly sets Bitwise apart is not just our 20 years of experience helping leading Fortune 500 companies solve their most pressing data challenges, but our dedication to developing unique tools that automate and accelerate complex processes, including PL SQL migration. We build strong partnerships with our customers, some of which are listed here, by providing data expertise, global delivery capabilities, and innovative solutions. At the conclusion of this presentation, we will open things up for an interactive Q&A session. Feel free to send your questions via the question feature during the webinar. We'll do our best to get through all the questions, but as always, you can contact us at any time at sales@bitwiseglobal.com. And with that, I'd like to pass things over to Shahab. Shahab?
Thanks, Nathan. So, why migrate? That's a good question, right? And the obvious answer is cost control. Maintaining a parallel environment to your ETL, which also touches different points in your data or your data lake or any of your data storage locations idea. In addition to maintaining two separate skill sets, there's another important problem to be considered. Data is now being transformed by two different lines of sequence of events. You have your Informatica or any other ETL tool doing its transformation through the ETL flow, but there's another track in stored packages that wake up and execute at a different flow line as opposed to Informatica and also touch the same data. It almost becomes impossible to track lineage and do any kind of analysis of the data movement inside your data warehouse if you have these two separate tracks which are modifying your data. So these are the two major reasons why people are looking to migrate off of their ETLs, PL SQL stored packages and consolidate everything inside the ETL environment, so it will be easier to maintain the code, which would reduce the cost automatically, and also from a lineage and impact perspective, it will be so much easier, or actually even possible now, to do a complete end-to-end data lineage across the whole environment in one single tool. Not to mention that the tools like Informatica or the later generation of ETL tools provide better features for auditing, logging of metadata, which PL SQL absolutely does not, being in a 3GL procedural format. So these are some of the reasons why I'm looking to migrate. So what are the challenges as we look to migrate from our traditional, from our ETL packages to our, from our PL SQL packages to our ETL solutions? Well, the number one challenge is PL SQL is complex. I mean, it is, after all, procedural code that someone wrote, say 10, 15 years ago. They use all their if then else, for do, and all the other complex logic inside their SQL statements to do the complex processing. And this, in most customers that we talk to, most of the stored packages were generated or created at a time when there wasn't a very good option, like a procedural, non-procedural field. So most of the convoluted logic was actually performed in these ETL packages. So you need someone to read through this laborious PL SQL package code, understand what the author was looking to accomplish, and then replicate that logic which was in the procedural code inside a non-procedural flow that you would see in the ETL tool like Informatica, because Informatica does not flow like a PL SQL package. It flows in terms of components, it flows in terms of functions and properties. So you need someone who understands both the environments very well and can mentally map what you have inside a PL SQL package into the actual flow you would want to create inside an ETL tool. So that is the biggest challenge, and that is what makes it resource intensive. It also makes it tedious and error prone because, well, this is a lot to ask of a single programmer. And also the timeline is too long because you spend so much time first decomposing the source inside the stored package, and then in your mind constructing the flow that you want to implement inside the ETL product, and then go about writing the ETL and actually testing and everything. So it can get pretty time consuming as well. So time to market is long and the cost associated is pretty high. So these are the common challenges we've come across our customers who wish to convert PL SQL packages manually by just brute forcing with the number of developers reading the source code and creating the Informatica flow. So how do we solve that challenge? Before we jump into the actual development of the PL SQL to Informatica conversion automation, it would be right for me to give you some history, a little bit of a backdrop, because the PL SQL converter is piggybacking on top of what we have as an offering for the last 8 years, which is the ETL to ETL converter. And this will all tie in together as we show you the demo. So let me start with a history of where the ETL conversion came from. This has been around for almost 8 years. For about 8 years, we've been able to convert any ETL to any other ETL product. What we did was, because of 20 years plus experience in the ETL space, we have understood every ETL product to a great depth, and also realized that most ETL products on the top end are exactly the same. I mean, you can call an aggregate in one ETL product. It could have a different name in another product, but it's just the same thing. So the number of components, functions, that you have in ETL products, there's a lot of commonality. So what we did was we created a hub of a canonical representation of components and functions that are available across all ETL tools. That was the first step. So now any function or component in any ETL tool is now sitting in this XML format. This hub was created in XML format as an XML tag in this hub. Now we could read the ETL from any source ETL product. Most ETLs store their source code in an XML format. And that's why the XML was chosen as the standard for the hub. You read ETL that you write, say, in data stage, export that into an XML, parse the XML, and suck it into this hub. So now the same ETL logic that you wrote inside data stage is now sitting in this ETL hub. The next step is we have mapping tables, and let's say I'm going from data stage to Informatica. I have mapping tables which map every single component tag that you have in data stage to an equivalent component tag that you have in Informatica. And then we have a target spoke that will take this ETL that is sitting in the hub and create the equivalent XML representation of the same ETL for Informatica, and you import that into Informatica. So this is how we've been able to take ETLs across products. We've been doing it for almost 8 years. The reason why I talk about this will be clear pretty soon. So as we go to the next slide, this is the representation of what I just described, where you have the source script. There's a parser, which is the adoption plugin, which parses the what you have as a source script is the XML extract of the ETL from data stage. It will be parsed, given into our core. There will be a conversion plugin for the target. It will compile, not compile, but map it to the target ETL XML format. And from that point onwards, it's imported into your target. So this is the hub and spoke architecture we have for ETL conversion across ETL products. Now let's look at how can we apply the same logic, the same method of conversion to converting not from an ETL but from a PL SQL stored package. The number one challenge is, your PL SQL is not sitting in an XML. So PL SQL, and you import that into a hub. And that's the first part we were looking to solve. On the target side, we have the adapters which will take the code from our hub. So if you can bring this PL SQL logic into the XML hub, pushing it into any ETL product is pretty easy because we have the connectors already built. The challenge is to read the PL SQL and bring it into a format that a hub for the ETL products can understand it. So how did we solve that challenge? The first step was, it's a two-step process, the PL SQL analyzer. So we built an analyzer. This reads your PL SQL package code and creates a graphical representation of that code. So for if then else statements, you'll have these forks inside this graph. For loop, there will be loop statements. So it pretty much copies the code from your stored procedure and brings it into this graphical representation of that code. And this is the heart of the entire converter, because what you have done is decompose the code on your source in the stored package and actually given it some structure that someone can look and understand and get a feeling of what the ETL developer who was developing this code in PL SQL stored packages so many years ago was thinking. What was the logic behind it? And that's the first step towards mapping it into the ETL mindset. So that part is automated, and that's the most difficult part, where you need to first understand the whole logic of graphical representation is a big help. Anyone who has tried this brute force approach of having a developer read PL SQL code and write ETL in Informatica will understand that if you have a graphical representation of the PL SQL, it is so much easier for the developer now to map that graphical representation of the data flow into a graph or a map, as they call it in Informatica. So that's like part of the problem solved. But we didn't stop there. The next step is you can export this graphical representation, this analyzer graph, into an XML format. And we will see this pretty soon in the demo. What this does is it takes all the where clauses, constructs, and everything that you have in this graph and puts them in XML compatible Informatica specific tag-like features into a mapping document. So pretty much what you're doing is, when you write an ETL in Informatica, you start with a mapping document. In the mapping document, you have source fields and the target fields. We are in a repository, and this is a prerequisite of using this. We do a export of the entire metadata from your database into the backend of our mapper. So this repository now can look at the representation of every single data field in your PL SQL package and get the actual metadata value from the metadata repository, and create the source and target side of the mapping. And all the transformations that you're doing inside the PL SQL now become the transformations from the source to target in this mapping document. We can go into much more details if you have a one-on-one conversation around this in this current webinar format where I have a 30-minute limit. I'll just leave it at this, that what it is doing is from a PL SQL package procedural code, it's creating a PL SQL analysis, creating a graphical format, graphical representation of the package, and then from that, it is automatically creating a mapping document for an ETL. Once you have the mapping document for the ETL, we feed that to our automated conversion that I previously described that we use to convert across ETLs. It sucks this mapping document inside the hub I just talked about earlier, and once this ETL mapping is residing in the hub, the conversion to any target ETL product is already built, because it can take the ETL mapping inside the hub and push it into Informatica, data stage, talent, what have yous. So that's how we have accomplished piggybacking on top of our existing ETL to ETL conversion, and now we can actually read any PL SQL package and push it into Informatica. And now it's time to see an actual live demo of how this is accomplished. So
okay, so at this point we are now ready to look at the actual demo of the conversion. So as we are looking at now, we are opening a stored procedure, and it automatically converts that into its graphical representation. So this is where we are looking at the SQL server, the SQL flow inside the stored procedure in a graphical format. Your if-then, for-do loops, everything in a graphical format. That makes it so much easier for someone who's wishing to convert the code to actually visualize the flow of data inside the stored procedure, inside the package. So then the next step is, we are mapping that graphical information into a componentized kind of a Excel sheet. So what we're seeing here is, like, if we look at the where clause, the actual statement, the SQL statements that are in the stored procedure are actually copied into this graphical representation, and then the same things are copied into the Excel sheet. The Excel sheet is a mapping of the graphical representation of your SQL Server code into something that can be easily mapped into XML. What we're leading to here is the PL SQL code is now being mapped into something that can represent an Informatica or an ETL component. So what we're seeing in the spreadsheet is all the SQL information and the flow of the PL SQL program has now been taken into an Excel sheet and broken down into components, and which are strung together by the conditional statements in the PL SQL, in the SQL package actually. The next step is we feed that spreadsheet, the Excel spreadsheet, into our ETL converter we just talked about earlier in the webinar. And what it does is, instead of feeding a XML file from the source ETL, now feeds a CSV file from the Excel, which is a representation of those ETL components. It's now bringing it into the hub we talked about earlier, and then from the hub it is creating the XML equivalent in Informatica on the target side. So, and there you see the actual conversion is complete. And the next thing we'll do is it has actually created an XML that is equivalent to the XML you will actually have in a Informatica ETL. And we're now importing that XML into Informatica. And there you go. The import was successful. And the next step would be, there you go, that's coming into Informatica. So the XML representation of the ETL is in Informatica. We just do a drag and drop over there, and there it is. We arrange it by icons. And if you look at that, the filter statement, the if then else has the very process first we'll see have been copied over here exactly into the statements we see from the PL SQL package. the if then else is actually converted it into a a filter statement. So we have mapped every single construct you see inside the stored procedure into actual components in Informatica, and that's how you starting from a PL SQL ending into a Informatica ETL.
So that was the actual product. Now, how do we engage? So our solution approach. We start with an assessment phase. We inventory all the existing artifacts. We look at all of your source code. We will come up with some kind of a plan because, for all the things that I've shown you so far, there's a good deal of automation. But you can only go from a structured PL SQL code to a structured Informatica code. What I mean to say here is, in this evaluation, if we find that if the PL SQL was written in a very unstructured fashion, if someone who was writing a too many go-to statements, there is no equivalent for a go-to. You can do a for-do loop in Informatica, which is a component read, and you can do a cluster representation in Informatica if you open a cursor. But if you do go-to statements, you are just jumping from place to place. That pretty much cannot be accomplished in any ETL in your PL SQL in a structured format, which most ETL code should be. I mean, I don't believe there are too many people even in the past who actually use too many go-to statements. We are pretty much okay with calling, like if you're calling external processes from your stored procedure, we can replicate that in Informatica by calling maplets. So any of that is completely possible. It's just that there's got to be a logical flow to the ETL, to the PL SQL package, to the actual source code. And as long as that is in place, this automation will work without any problems. So that's the part of the assessment phase. So we assess how you wrote the ETL, and we are upfront, and we'll let you know that, how much of this can be automated. So that's the assessment phase. There's a conversion automation. We estimate about 40% effort saving. Why do we say that? When we have such an automatic converter that can take the code and give you Informatica code, because conversion of the code is one part of the equation. Testing is quite another. We factor the complete end-to-end effort required these PL SQL packages and convert them into running and parallel tested Informatica code or any other ETL code. So that's why we, from an effort saving perspective, just the coding is, what we're looking at. The effort saving, the total savings are more than 40%. But if you look, because the testing will still have to be done by someone, and if you factor that in, the overall effort saving from a budgeting perspective, on a very conservative level, is about 40%. And then in the end, there is this. We have another offering, and I just talked about the testing piece. We have another offering. We have it's called Quality Eye, that can also save some effort as far as testing is concerned. So if you combine the two together, the overall savings will go much above 40%. But if you choose to do this testing manually from the parallel testing between the stored procedures and Informatica, we are projecting about 40% effort savings. So as we said, there is a assessment phase. We come in, look at all the artifacts we converted. We do a proof of concept. So we take a small number like 50 to 100 jobs that you want to be converted to ETL to Informatica. We actually show that to you, and we fix with that. And all the costs for the rest of the conversion can be extrapolated from what we can accomplish for you in the proof of concept. And then we have a phased approach after that, because normally we see customers go from not a big bang approach, but they go from application to application. So like if there are, say, 1,000 stored procedures across the organization, there could be a few hundred in one application, a few hundred in some other application. And the best approach is to retire these packages by application as opposed to taking a broader view upfront. So we chalk out the phase approach in consultation with the customer, and then we build the entire migration plan. Okay. So what are the key benefits, right? The biggest benefit here is the visualization of the PL SQL code in a graphical format. I mean, in the PL SQL analyzer, we feel adds the most value over here, because even if there are so many conditions that you put in the PL SQL, soon as you can look at that PL SQL code in a graphical format, it starts clicking in your mind exactly how that code is going to fit inside of your target ETL environment. So the biggest benefit here is ability to visualize the PL SQL code in a graphical format. We can efficiently convert everything from source to target. There's data quality, best practices that we bring to the table. We have deployment processes and efficiencies. So all comprehensively create a Bitwise value-added package that can bring a lot of value to any organization willing to take their ETL, their PL SQL stored procedures to a target ETL environment. So with that, we're coming to an end of our our presentation. I'll pass it back to Nathan at this time.
Great. Thanks, Shahab. And thank everyone for joining us today for an automated approach to migrating PL SQL to Informatica. As always, stay informed at bitwiseglobal.com and contact us at sales@bitwiseglobal with any questions.